Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Monday, June 23rd, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, we take a look at what exactly this weekend's strikes on Iran might mean. Plus, we talk about killer bees, and there's a new NBA champion. A spokesperson for Iran's Central Military Headquarters said earlier today that the U.S. attack on its nuclear sites expanded the range of legitimate targets for its armed forces and called President Donald Trump a gambler for joining Israel's military campaign against Iran. Trump ordered airstrikes on 3 nuclear targets in Iran over the weekend.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Bombs and missiles launched from U.S. warplanes hit nuclear sites at Fordow, Isfahan, and Natanz. For more on what the move might mean more broadly and the response around the world, I spoke with USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page. Susan, as always, I appreciate you joining me.
It's great to be with you.
So just starting here, politically, what was President Donald Trump's aim in launching these attacks, and do you think he succeeded on that front?
Well, militarily, it looks like it was a success. We'll need to wait a little before they have a better assessment of exactly the state of Iran's nuclear program. Politically, it's more complicated. President Trump ran 3 times for president, denouncing endless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and advocating an America First foreign policy. And with this action, he has engaged in another war in a volatile region with the consequences yet to unfold.
Well, Susan, in this piece, you write that the White House debate over whether to launch the bombers put at odds some of Trump's most fundamental impulses. You touched on that here. Is that what you mean, just in terms of kind of a little bit of a shift from what we had heard from him on the America First front?
One impulse he has is this idea of America First, where you pay more attention to problems at home and you leave the world to sort its problems out on their own. But he has another impulse, which is he likes to get stuff done. He is impatient with process. You see that in the way he's handled deporting undocumented workers from the United States. And he's also, I think, thinking about his legacy. He can't run for another term. He knows the clock is always ticking. If he succeeded in being the president who got rid of Iran's nuclear program, that would be a big achievement.
We've heard dissent even within MAGA around some of the issues, even ahead of these strikes and now afterwards. Does the president have the political capital, Susan, to get Republicans to circle the wagons here?
I think he does. I think we have over and over again underestimated President Trump's hold on the Republican Party, which continues to be quite firm. But it's not universal. And you even saw the Georgia Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been a big ally of his, saying it was a mistake to do this, and that every time we start to make America great again, she said, we get involved in another foreign war. So there is division in Republican ranks, but you still have a Republican Party that is really ruled by Donald Trump.
Well, taking this conversation to the Middle East, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned just last week that any U.S. strike would have serious, irreparable consequences. Susan, should that be the expectation now this week? What are we hearing from Iran?
Well, on Sunday, Iran's foreign minister said there would be consequences and that there would be the responsibility of Donald Trump for having launched this attack. But he did not specifically say they would target U.S. forces in the region. That would escalate the conflict considerably for Washington. We also don't know the state of Iran's military hardware after this conflict with Israel that's been going on. So we're kind of in a wait and see mode to see when and how Iran will respond.
You mentioned Israel. Their Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu argues that Iran's nuclear program poses an existential threat to his country. What are we hearing out of Israel after this move?
We talked about this being a legacy-making moment for Donald Trump. This is a legacy-making moment for Benjamin Netanyahu. He has warned about Iran's nuclear program for decades. If he is the Israeli prime minister who gets rid of it, that would be his dream of years.
And this is just the question everyone's asking here as we start a new week, Susan. Is the U.S. now at war, or was this a one-and-done move?
Well, the White House hopes it's one and done. But President Trump said when he addressed the American people that if Iran responded with attacks, that there were more places we could bomb and that we would do so. So I think that's not a question that we can answer quite yet.
All right. Susan Page is USA Today's Washington bureau chief. Folks can go find her full piece. Did a great job breaking all this down with a link in today's show notes. I thank you for your time, Susan.
Hey, thank you.
Trump yesterday wrote on social media that regime change may be needed in Iran just hours after Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States was not aiming for a change in leadership there. You can stay with usatoday.com throughout the day and the week for the latest. The U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear sites could hit the American economy at an already fragile time. The country's entry into what had been attacks between Israel and Iran is most likely to impact oil prices, investors said, which could ripple through the economy by causing higher transportation and gas prices, just as overall inflation throughout the economy has seemed to be contained. Nigel Green, chief executive of DeVere Group, a financial advisory firm, said that the world economy is not in a strong position to absorb another energy shock. Africanized honeybees, often called killer bees, are now found in 13 states and are slowly spreading northward. I caught up with USA Today national correspondent Elizabeth Weiss to learn more. Hey there, Beth.
Hey, always here to tell you about the latest and greatest scary things to think about.
Yeah, always a pleasure having you on to do so. Let's talk about Africanized honeybees today, also known as killer bees. What are they?
So it turns out, like back in the 50s, there was this honeybee expert down in Brazil, and honeybees don't do well in Brazil. And he's thought, heck, I could bring in African bees, which do well in the rainforest, mate them with European honeybees, and get honeybees that do really well here in Brazil, produce a lot of honey, but are gentle. And he was going to breed them, and life was going to be great. And unfortunately, the next year, some of the queens got out before he had a chance to breed gentleness into them. They thrived there. In fact, they did so well that they started to move north and they got to South Texas in 1990.
Why are these bees such killers, Beth? What makes them different from other honeybees?
So Western honeybees, which are the ones that we're used to, that we have in Europe and that came to the US in the 1500s probably. So they've hybridized with these African honeybees. And the thing is, Western honeybees are very gentle. I mean, they'll come out, they'll be like, yeah, get away from us, but they won't be too upset. Africanized honeybees evolved in a much more predator-rich environment. And so they are very protective of their colonies, much more so than European honeybees. Whereas European honeybees, they'd send out 5 or 10 bees to kind of see what was going on. Africanized honeybees will come out in a swarm because that's what they evolved to do.
And we've even seen some, I guess, recent incidents in the U.S., Beth, that unfortunately have resulted in death. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, that's what sparked this story. I wrote a story last month about a bee attack in Texas where they swarmed a woman and her horses, and the horses, unfortunately, 3 of them died. She was okay, but yeah, we've had a guy got taken to the hospital. We had hikers who had to run a mile away. There was a man who was just mowing some grass on his property, and he died in an attack, and that was just in the last 3 months. So, they're here, and you have to be careful of them.
You mentioned they moved north from Brazil up to the U.S. How is climate changing where these bees are now ending up, even within the U.S.?
So they like a more arid or semi-arid environment, and they don't like cold winters. So there's been kind of a line. In our story, we've got a map that shows it. It's all the way from California across the Southwest to Florida. But especially in the West, as the climate warms and becomes drier, they're moving northward. So they're expected to end up in southeastern Oregon, perhaps the western Great Plains, and even maybe the southern Appalachians.
We know bees writ large are important, Beth. What's the upside to Africanized honeybees?
We need bees, not just honeybees. There's a lot of native bees out there. They are important in the ecosystem. They're hugely important in agriculture. So we need bees. And in the last 2 decades, we've had significant bee die-offs in the US. There's a variety of reasons, including some introduced illnesses that affect bees. And the thing about these African honeybees, and now the Africanized honeybees here, is they've got really good genetic diversity, and they're very pest and disease resistant. In an ideal world, and this is what honeybee experts are working on, if you could do what they originally wanted to do down in Brazil, which is get the great traits from the African honeybees, and combine them with the great traits of the Western honeybees, you would have disease-resistant, drought-resistant bees that were also great honey producers. And so that's why they're important, but we haven't quite gotten there yet.
All right, and what should you do if you encounter an Africanized honeybee hive? And also, how do you know that that hive has Africanized honeybees in it?
If you encounter a hive, run away as fast as you possibly can. How do you know? You don't. And it's interesting that, it kind of takes genetic testing to tell they look almost exactly similar. There's a slight difference in the wing pattern, which you have to look at under a microscope. So you can't really know. But all the experts that I spoke with said European honeybees will come out and, you may get a sting or two, but you're not going to get swarmed with dozens or hundreds or thousands of them. If you see a huge swarm coming at you and they're stinging, there's a really good chance they're Africanized. They will follow you for a mile, even in a car or truck. The other important thing is if you have a colony of these things on your property, call in an expert, because this is not something where you just go to the hardware store and get something and you can spray it on them. You need somebody who can actually come in and deal with them.
We have a link in today's show notes. And also within this story, folks can find a good map to let you know on where these things are showing up within the U.S. as well. Elizabeth Weiss is a national correspondent with USA Today. Thanks, Beth.
Happy to be here.
The Oklahoma City Thunder are NBA champions. They capped a dominant season with a 103-91 win over the Indiana Pacers in Game 7 of the finals last night. The Pacers went without star Tyrese Halliburton for much of the game after he exited in the first quarter with a leg injury. For the Thunder, star Shai Gilgeous-Alexander delivered a huge performance and became the first player since LeBron James in 2013 to win a title, regular season MVP, and finals MVP in the same season. It's the franchise's first championship since relocating to Oklahoma City from Seattle in 2008. Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And as always, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.